Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
Well, Nick, only 15 games left to go in this season for the Columbus Blue Jackets already. First off, amazing where all the time is gone, but it's an interesting time in Blue Jacket land because not only are there 15 games left, it's 15 games left where it seems that the team is not going to make the playoffs. It's like that's their reality. So let's start off this week by just jumping right into this and just asking you, what are you looking for in these final 15 games?
Really, Mark, I'm looking for some answers. I think throughout the whole regular season, we've been kind of looking at that trade deadline as like, all right, they're going to do something at the trade deadline so that we have an idea where the future of this team is going. And then he just made one trade. You know, the team makes one move and leaves a lot of those questions unanswered. It's kind of just a status quo thing for the Jackets moving through the rest of the season. And it's it's kind of leaving a lot to think about moving forwards. I mean, we're going to get into the defense, no major moves on the defense. It's kind of just pushed those questions off, a lot of them, to the offseason and whatnot. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what to expect. And I think that's kind of been what we've been noticing throughout this whole season is that we just don't know what to expect from this Blue Jackets team. What are you thinking?
Nick, there's two things that come to mind here. So the team's going to look at it is they're going to continue to build because the way they handled the deadline, it seemed like they wanted Max Domi gone. They waited till 2:59 to see if any better offers came in. It didn't, so they took the offer that they got and ran with it. Now that's a sign that they weren't interested in the player. They weren't going to re-sign him. That was that. But they kept everybody else. So that tells me that it's open tryout season. 15 games, make your mark. Zach Werenski's out of the lineup right now. He's not going to play the next two games. Boone Jenner's out week to week. Who knows when he's going to come back? Could be done for the season. We don't know that yet. Alex Texier's on leave. Who knows if he's coming back this season? So there's guys they're in the lineup right now that are getting their chance to make their mark. Who's going to step up? This is their one chance to really make an impression. Do you want it? Are you part of this future? That this is their opportunity. They might not get a better opportunity than this one. And that's what I'm going to be looking for in these last 15 games. We know more or less who the core is going to be in the immediate future. The Patrick Line is probably going to be back. Jake Voracek's going to be back. Oliver Bjorkstrand's going to be back. Gus Nyquist wasn't traded at the deadline. He's going to be back. Cole Cylinder is a big part of the future. We have an understanding of who's going to be here. But how about the guys that we don't know who's going to be here? Is Emil Bemstrom finally going to make his mark these last 15 games? Is he going to do enough to be able to convince management to come back? What about some of the other younger players? What about some of the depth players? Like, everybody has an interesting story. And in these final 15 games, I'm going to be watching how they handle themselves. That Islander game on Tuesday night, they fell down 4-1. I wanted to see who didn't quit. I wanted to see who continued to press in, and they made a game of it. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Every situation, they're being watched, they're being judged. This is their opportunity.
So you mentioned they got down, they've come back.
Yep.
There's been a lot of comebacks this season, Mark.
Yeah.
What do you make of this team's ability to come back and on the other side also not sometimes be able to hold a lead in terms of allowing other teams to come back on them?
It's a two-pronged question and a good question, Nick.
Take it as well as you will.
Take it as well as we will. So it means that their offense is really good, and it means their defense is really bad. That's the real basic answer. When you have that combination that you can score upwards of 4 goals a game on offense, you can come back against almost anybody. However, when you give, this is the one thing that stuck out to me in the Islander game. They were just giving up the seam passes like it was out of style. Like the Islanders were able to do whatever they wanted in that second period. Players were out of position. You really can't pin that all on just being a young player. It's just they were not sound positionally at all. There's a lot of learning that's going on there. So when you just have that combination, you're going to get both sides of the argument where they can come back 21 times this season from trailing to get a win, but at the same time they can be up 4-0 against Carolina and give up 7 unanswered goals. That's the unpredictability of this team. Is yes, they're learning, yes, they're young. When they're good, they can be really, really good. Heck, they've beaten Florida, they've beaten Carolina, they've beaten Colorado twice. They can be really, really good. But then on the other hand, they can be really, really bad too. What do you think?
Well, for me, what I look at and see is just the youth on this team. We've mentioned it so many times, one of the youngest teams in the NHL. Consistency it's a problem with youth across the National Hockey League. That's just how it goes. The 82-game season is grueling. A 60-minute game alone is grueling, especially like back-to-back nights. That can wear down on young players. So this isn't really unexpected based on what we're seeing on paper in terms of youth and the level of inexperience. But the question is, where do they go from here? Are they going to, just hope that the pieces that they have will blossom into those, more consistent, more reliable pieces? And, this will kind of spread out a little bit over a period of games where they're consistent, as opposed to like just getting 60 minutes where they're consistent. Because, if you look at like a playoff series, this could be a Blue Jackets team where, like, if they're down 2 games in a series, if this ability to come back expands, maybe they can come back from a deficit of 2 games down or 3 games down, right? Because there is that level of dynamic qualities to them.
Yep.
But the other hand is, do you then say, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not willing to take a chance on if these guys are going to all blossom into that level of consistency, and move players at in the off season, which is generally when the Blue Jackets make their big moves. So that's the big thing moving forward for me.
Yeah, and let's transition into that too, Nick, because that I think it segues into the next topic very well. It's the state of the defense, right? So kind of alluded to it, and I alluded to it, you alluded to it. It seems to me anyway that you've got a lot of the similar type of defensemen. I'm specifically looking at guys like Adam Boquist and Jake Bean, guys who aren't exactly the strongest in the world right now. Obviously, being young and developing is part of it. But they're definitely missing an element. And you look back at that game on Saturday night against the Minnesota Wild. I mean, the Wild just imposed their will physically. They were stronger. They were able to do whatever they wanted. The Blue Jackets just simply did not have an answer. As the game Werenski went down, when the Middleton hit and the helmet went down on Werenski. But who on the Blue Jackets is going to answer that call? Like there isn't a Tom Wilson on the Blue Jackets. There isn't like Joel Eriksson Ek or Jordan Greenway on the Wild who can physically answer for that when the time comes. And I know that there are certain guys that will certainly try, but that's not their game. So that my question for you, Nick, is should that be an off-season priority for the Blue Jackets? Do they have to address the defense in such a way that they have to become more physical, or to at least get bigger to be able to compete with some of these other teams?
Well, we can specifically look at the Minnesota game. It's a faster team, a stronger team. Like I look at a guy like Jordan Greenway, he's like 6'6". Yep. He's like the Blue Jackets defense have no chance against a guy like that, because he can just blow right through him, with the exception of, I would say, probably Gavrikov. Vladislav Gavrikov, he's 6'3". I would say he's the closest bet to being, that physical presence. He's a bigger guy. He's not easy to knock off the puck by any means, but I shared a video on Twitter during the Minnesota game, and it was Kirill Kaprizov going into the corner, and Dean Kukin was coming at him from a great angle to be able to get the puck off the guy.
Yep.
And Kaprizov just throws this little reverse check, and Kukin's like done. And Kukin was coming in with a head of steam, and Kaprizov was just standing there. And it was like, you can't win games against a team if you can't knock 5'10" Kirill Kaprizov off the puck when you're Dean Kukin 6'2". Granted, Kirill Kaprizov is an outstanding talent.
Yep.
So it's not all that it's cracked up to be, but it's just little situations like that where you need to win those battles to be a team that can win games. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I just go back to the DNA of the Blue Jackets ever since Jarmo Kekalainen's been on board. They believe in the defense, and they always believe in building from the blue line back. And if there's one thing that I would think that they know they have to address, I mean, it seems pretty obvious. When you give up so many shots and you can't compete physically, yeah, you can depend on guys like Bean and Boquist and Kukan and others. Who knows if Kukan will be back? He's an unrestricted free agent. They can depend on them to get stronger, but will they put in the work? And I think the biggest tell, at least for me, were all the reports that they were interested in at least seeing if they could bring Jacob Chychrun in. Who is Jacob Chychrun? A bigger, stronger defenseman who can play offense, can bring that physical presence, and can eat a lot of minutes. That's going to very much appeal to Blue Jackets. So I think that's something that they very seriously have to account for and watch. They're going to look for any opportunity, maybe not get Chychrun because that's a high price, but if they can find a defenseman who can come in and complement some of these players, like, don't get me wrong, Jake Bean, Adam Boquist, great puck movers. Boquist especially got some real good offensive upside, but you got to be able to put some guys with them that can kind of protect them, shelter them a little bit, and be able to bring that edge that can help the defense. Give all the credit in the world to Andrew Peeke for stepping up his physical game. And he's actually only one of 3 players on the Blue Jackets, Nick, that's played every game this year, Andrew Peeke. Give him credit. There's your stat of the night, folks, right there. 67 games for Andrew Peeke. Is the only
very
defenseman.
Well researched stat, Mark.
That is. Do you know the other 2 players that have played every game this year off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I could pull it up. Tell me if you know.
All right. So the one I know off the top of my head is Gus Nyquist.
Is the other one Bjorkstrand? I feel like it's Bjorkstrand. That seems like that would make sense.
I feel like that it's not Bjorkstrand because I thought that he missed a little bit of time. But you give me a second. I'm going to tell you.
Hang on.
I'm going to tell you right here.
We'll
right
race.
now.
We're going to race for it. This is part of our early preview of Shenanigans.
Oh, and that's right. We're going to.
You're right.
Time to talk about Shenanigans.
Okay, we got it. I got it. Did you
got
get
it?
Fresh from Boston last year.
That's right, Corrali. There you go.
That's it.
Boom.
Sean Corrali.
Only 3 guys to play all games this year. But back to Peeke, though. That's huge for him to be able to take the step. That's huge. But they need to get somebody else that can come in, be that physical presence. And it might even cost one of those guys. Sometimes you've got to, if you have an abundance of something and you lack something else, sometimes you have to trade from abundance to get something you need. So I wonder if the right deal were to come about, if they're willing to trade one of those other defensemen, but otherwise, I think they have to do something. Don't you agree?
You got to spend money to make money, Mark. And I think especially with this blue line, I think the thought, it seems what this whole organization is kind of trying to shift in terms of getting those offensive presences. Because if you look at the history of the Blue Jackets, they've always been strong two-way, they've only had 1 point per game player in their history, and his name was Artemi Panarin. Mm-hmm. More than a point per game over a full 82 game season.
Yep.
So I think it seems as though they're going for those more offensive guys. So maybe on the blue line right now, they've kind of overcorrected to kind of get those kind of players. But I think you're right. They will try and swing that back a little bit somewhere in the middle.
So, Nick, you happen to know what you don't have to pay for, right?
Is it something we talk about every week?
Believe it or not, pretty much. It's this thing. It's called the morning skate.
The morning skate. Does that mean I got to get out of bed and go to the rink and start skating every morning? I don't know if my heart could handle it.
Oh, the good news for you is that you do not have to go to the rink to get the morning skate. All you
Okay.
have to do is get up in the morning, log into your computer, and you can go to our website, thehockeywriters.com, or you can just go directly to morningskate.io and you get the
Computer. Mark, what are you,
computer.
a millennial? What are you, a boomer?
I plead the
Oh,
fifth.
geez. Sorry,
Oh,
that one hurt.
geez.
Sorry.
Oof.
Jeez.
Oof.
All right. This is my last appearance on the Union Junction podcast. It's been fun.
It's
Thank
been
you for
fun.
listening.
Thank you for listening. No, but seriously, visit the site. Great hockey stories. You don't even have to get up out of bed, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Morningskate.io. Just do it. It'll be very
Just
much worth your time.
just do it. That's a great slogan.
Really
We should
is.
think about trademarking it. Just do it.
Just do it.
I don't think that's ever been thought of before. That's a good one.
Guarantee you it's never been thought of before. You should
Trademark
do something
Mark
about
Scheig.
it. There you go. So, Nick, let's actually talk about something that I think gets a lot of play in the hockey world today. It's certainly going to segue to what we just talked about with the need for physicality and size, is the role of the enforcer. And, do you really feel like that the Blue Jackets have to bring somebody in? If you recall earlier in the year, they brought in who they
Zach Ronaldo.
Zach Ronaldo, him.
Yeah.
And it did not work out because of the vaccination status. But
Yeah.
you kind of wonder if he could have been someone that could have played that role. Is that something the Blue Jackets have to do, or is that something they have to address moving forward at all?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure they need to address it. I think there's some pieces in the organization that could already kind of fill that role. Somebody who really stood out to me in the preseason was Josh Dunn. Like this guy, he's a center. He's 6'4", 210. He threw hands in the preseason. He was physical. He was a great piece, and I thought he would have been great in maybe in a little bottom six capacity. I think he's hurt. Is he hurt with
He's
Cleveland
missed
right now?
bunch of games with the Monsters right now. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that kind of derailed his maybe appearance. But there are some pieces. James Malatesta, is that his name?
Malatesta, yeah.
Yeah, he's another guy who is he's scrappy. He's in that same Tom Wilson mold. He's a little smaller. I think he's 5'11" or something, but you can be Brad Marchand, throw hands and still be a little smaller. They do have a lot of options for that, so I don't think that's something they really need to look external for. What do you think?
Look at the Rangers for a second. I think they're a very interesting case study this year. Remember the talk from years past of this year? Who's there now? Ryan Reeves. Barclay Goodrow. You can keep going. Remember when Wilson ragdolled Panarin and they said that's never going to happen again? Well, look at the Rangers now. Aren't they one of the best teams in the league? I know Shesterkin's one of the big reasons why that's happening, and Chris Kreider's having a pretty historic seasons, putting up numbers that hasn't been seen since the Mario Lemieux days. So there's certainly things that are going well for them, but they're not getting ragdolled anymore. They're not playing intimidated anymore. There's a certain level of confidence and swagger they're playing with. I'm not saying that you go out and look for a fight all the time, but if there's a situation that ever crops up, I think there's a huge difference between not having that presence and having that presence on your team. Because if a team looks and they see that there's Ryan Reeves over there. Oh crap. I got to watch myself a little bit. Whether players want to admit it or not, Nick, that makes a big difference. And I actually think that to a small degree, that has helped the Rangers just because they're able to, their star players are able to be their star players without having to worry as much about retribution. What do you think?
I don't think you're wrong. I really don't. I think that is important, but I think it's more a part of just having more tools in your tool chest. Like you see some of these one-dimensional teams who can really dominate through the regular season, really skilled, but as soon as they hit the playoffs, somebody's figured out their system and they're done. It's those multi-dimensional teams that can be physical, that can be skilled, who are all take that next level. So I I really don't think you're wrong, but I do think that if you are going to have a player like that, they have to also be able to play. It's not like wasted minutes. It's not like, I hate to name call, but like Colton Orr back with the Leafs a long time ago,
Mhm.
he played like 6 minutes a night. Like you don't want to waste a roster spot on a player just for that physicality. But at the same time, it it does stick in the back of players' minds while they're playing the game for sure, I think.
So what you're trying to say is it's actually okay for those type of players to have more penalty minutes in a game than time on ice?
That's bold. Depends on how you get them.
Interesting.
You got to really make efficient decisions with your penalty minutes.
I at least think they have to be able to match the level of physicality and then at least be able to answer the call. The one thing Zach Werenski told me earlier this year in Buffalo that they needed to improve on was answering the call when other teams stepped up like that. He admitted that the Blue Jackets were lacking in that department, and that's something that we'll look to see how they improve moving forward, not just for the rest of this season, but in future seasons, and how management elects to fix that.
Well, the other thing, Mark, is like I just looked it up. Ryan Reeves, he doesn't even come close to leading the Rangers in penalty minutes, and he's played pretty much every game for them. So it's just having that presence. You don't have to be dirty about it. You don't have to fight about it, but like just that reputation alone can really scare some guys.
And it can help the other guys just be able to be themselves too. I really think that there's something to it there. But we're going to go to Twitter before we introduce the name of our. We've always called it the Lightning Round. But we've got a new name we're going to unveil here. But I took to Twitter and I wanted to get some fans' reaction. At the beginning here, Nick, we talked about what are we going to kind of be watching over the last 15 games or so, and I asked fans, give fans some of your other reasons of why you watch the games down the stretch, and I'll read a couple of these. First one from Nathan here. I even tweeted, said this absolutely wins. Why are you watching the last 15 games? Because hockey.
Great reason. That's all you need right there.
End it right there. Shut it down. He wins.
Notarize it. That's it.
That's the tweet. That's it. That's the tweet. There's a couple really good answers out here though. So from, let's see, it's at Matt TH19. For a young team of acquired players and recent draft picks assembled under a year ago, they have shown that they are further along in their development than expected. They definitely have the look and feel of a future contender. It's fun to watch. Do you agree with that?
That it's fun to watch?
That they have the look and feel of a contender?
Yeah, I do. The pieces are there. They just got to see that growth and that development in longer stretches. But I don't think anybody would argue that the elite pieces aren't there. Or would you, Mark? Would you argue?
No, I think it's a good point. The pieces are there. I think there's enough evidence of a bright future that fans are more excited now than I think they ever have been. Just because, Ken Johnson's maybe a couple weeks away here. We'll talk more about him next week in advance of the Frozen Four up in Boston. But, when you have a guy like him coming, possibly Marchenko, depending on how that whole Russia situation works out, and then knowing that you have a couple first-round draft picks in 22, there's clear evidence that this team. And the other thing, too, to keep in mind, the players that are there, like Nyquist and Werenski, they're on record as believing in where this is going. And, that carries a lot of weight when those guys say something like that, too.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that. Now, so Bob Amos says, finishing well ahead of the New York Islanders, the New Jersey Devils, the Philadelphia Flyers is very doable and would be no small achievement, given how young the team is. Then add some components next year once they see the top for divisional rivals within striking distance. Now, isn't that interesting? Remember that a lot of the pundits said, the Blue Jackets are going to finish last. I know the Islanders are right there, but man, they really could finish 5th or 6th when everyone expected them to finish 9th in an 8-team division.
Yeah, there is for sure. But they mentioned, finishing well ahead of those guys is exciting. I hate to be of that camp, but I got to remind you, if they're finishing way ahead of those guys, that's one draft spot worse. You know what I mean? Each one of those teams.
Yeah.
And so in a year where people were expecting, maybe 2 top 10 picks at one point, maybe even like top 7, top 8 picks at one point, we're looking farther and farther away from that. So that will have some consequences moving forward.
I'll counterpoint that to one degree. Is there really that significant of a difference between, let's say I'll just throw it out there, between picks 10 and 15? Is there that big of a difference?
It really depends on the draft, right? Like 2015, no. Like you saw huge guys going off the board 17, 18, 19, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like one of the strongest drafts of all time. But
if you're going from
really
first
depends.
to eighth, if you're going from first or second to eighth, absolutely that's a consideration. But if you're going from like 7th to 10th, 9th to 12th, I don't feel like you're losing that much. And
it's not too much.
Maybe
I'll concede a little bit.
Look at that. I can even get you.
There is a difference though. There's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I understood.
But also in that range though, you could probably trade up if you really wanted a guy.
If someone was interested,
there's a little more flexibility for a 9 pick than a 5 pick.
If you're a general, we'll start this early. If you're a general manager and you had a choice between picking 5th or picking 7th and 13th, which one are you picking?
Yeah, you got to go 7 and 13.
I think
there's no question.
Unless the guy at 5 is somebody that you very much believe in.
Yeah,
I would agree, because you're talking about draft value and it's pretty close at that point. You have to at least have a conversation if that's a possibility.
Well, yeah, look at who the Jackets got last year at 13, right?
At 12, yeah.
Right? Was it 13, 12, 13? 12, around there. Yeah. So close, right?
Close.
Like that's a difference maker right there.
And we still could look back at that draft as one of the changing points of this franchise, being able to get both Cole Sillinger and Kent Johnson in the top 12. That's good work.
Yeah.
A couple more real quick before we go to the new lightning round. And let's see what we got here. Oh, Chris Adams. I'm a glutton for punishment, and I'm used to it from the other 15 seasons we didn't make the playoffs. That's a mood right there, right? Somebody who's seen it all.
Yeah, poor guy.
And I'll end with this. There's 2 more I'll read here. Ashley Clifford says, obviously the end game is the cup, but the road to getting it is lined with years of work and all the little steps. I like that. Every single game is another step to that eventful cup. If you just quit because it isn't the year, are you even allowed to stand and clap when you're holding it? Wow. Coming with the heat.
Somebody had an experience.
Someone
was it
had
Ashley?
An experience.
Ashley had an experience. Yeah. But that's so true. Like, if you look at the Vegas Golden Knights, if they would have won in that first year, are you really going to appreciate it as much as the St. Louis Blues, who waited like 50 years?
Great question. Yeah.
You gotta get through that heartbreak to really be like, wow, that was worth it.
Yeah. You know what else is worth it, right?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
I am going to tell you right now. And it is, once again, it is the morning skate. It is so.
God bless you, Mark Scheig.
It is absolutely worth it. I know we harp on it, but listen, the stories that are in there, absolutely free of charge to you, waiting in your inbox every morning if you sign up. And it doesn't get much more convenient than that. You can never get enough hockey content, and we'll bring it to you every morning if you sign up. Morningskate.io. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. And the last one I'll read here is from Brianna, and she says, because absolutely anything could happen. Every game is exciting in the way that at any given moment, they could score 6 unanswered or tie it with less than a minute left. Even though they give up a lot of goals, the emotional high from the good times drowns out the bad. Man, that's a good philosophy talk here.
The last 3 games for the Jackets, like this last week.
Yeah.
There's one thing you can't say about them, and it's that they were boring.
That's exactly right.
They're worth a click every night.
There you go. So now it's time for the best part of the show. So we're not going to give credit to the Lightning anymore. We've always called this the Lightning round, but from here on out, we're going to just call this Shenanigans. And
We're sweeping the lightning round out of existence.
yeah, no free cap for the Lightning and no more free advertising for the Lightning. So the way where this is going to work, we'll probably alternate this depending on the week, but we'll have questions related to the Blue Jackets, related to hockey, and because it's Shenanigans, it can be related to anything in general. And play along with us.
Whoa, wait, what? Anything in general?
And wait for some of these questions, Nick.
Is it going to be hockey related, or are you going to start diving into things I did in elementary school?
Oh, it could be anything. That's the fun part.
I don't know if you're ready for the tiers, Mark. I don't know if you're ready.
Bring it here. Well, we'll start with the hockey one.
All right, thank you.
Four games this coming week until we do Union Junction again. At the Islanders, home and home with Boston, and then in Philadelphia. How many wins of the four do the Blue Jackets get?
Oh, that's tough. I'm gonna say they're gonna split it. They got to get one against Boston. They've got to, and I think they're gonna be a little fired up in Philly. Let's say Philly too.
A little more pessimistic. I'm going to say one. I say they will win in Philadelphia, but the Islanders have had their number as of late. Their top line especially has been dynamite. And Boston has to win these games. I mean, they got shelled by Toronto the other night, and they're trying to avoid that potential first round matchup where they could see Tampa or Florida. They need these games. So I feel like they're going to be motivated. So I say one out of the four.
Bold.
Another hockey. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just
Another
said bold.
Bold.
It was a useless take. A useless take, Mark. A filler word.
Filler word. Hockey question, but outside the Blue Jackets. Which would be the worst scenario for a team to miss the playoffs? Vegas or Edmonton?
Oh man. Edmonton's always bad. I think Edmonton's like, everybody hates Edmonton anyways. In Edmonton, they're just like, oh, the Oilers, we've been waiting so long. But Vegas had a pretty decent thing going. And then they sold their soul to get all these big free agent guys and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going with Vegas, because that would be the first time they miss, right?
It would be the first time that they miss. And if it wasn't for the injuries, I would say them. I give them a small pass because they literally have a mash unit. But when you have Connor McDavid like this, and you've only won one playoff round in his entire career, and he started with the Oilers in 2015, and it's 2022. They can't do it again. Now, they make the playoffs as we're speaking right now, but if they don't keep winning, Vegas could come back. Dallas is starting to win some. They can't let off the gas here. And that goaltending situation, if it starts to implode again, they elected not to do anything about it. So
let me ask you this follow-up quick rapid fire. Yep. Does Connor McDavid end his career as an Oiler? And two, when does he leave the Oilers if not?
I don't think he leaves the Oilers. And covering him,
really?
He'll honor the contract. And unless something happens in the background, it's not within him to just give up and walk away. He could have done it in Erie with juniors. He didn't do that. Worked out to be a great decision. He's going to do everything he can to make it in Edmonton. So I'm of the belief he's going to be Oiler pretty much for life. But
so you don't think when this contract's done, he's even sniffing for agency?
I don't think it happens.
He's got his heated driveway in Edmonton, so he's all good.
I think he's an Oilers lifer.
All right, that's fair.
Okay, which team right now is your Stanley Cup winner? And we'll revisit this question as the weeks go on.
Oh man, that's a tough one. It's tight. I'm looking at. Can I pick one from each conference? Can you give me that at least?
I will allow this week. I will allow you to pick one from each conference.
Oh, you are so benevolent.
Well,
the great Mark Scheig. I'm going to say from the West, Colorado, I like Nate McKinnon in the playoffs way too much to count him out. Even against Calgary, that would be a tough one, but I think they could come out. And in the East, it's hard to hate against Florida, but if Shesterkin stays hot and they light things up, is it the Rangers? Is it? I'm stuck between Florida and the Rangers, but I think I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna go by the last 10. Okay, Florida's 7-2-1, and the Rangers are 7-3-0. So this isn't helping. Flip a coin. Let's go Florida. Let's pick Florida.
I'm still on the Tampa Bay Lightning wagon. See Vasilevsky, Andre, until someone
Mark.
can actually prove to me that they can beat Vasilevsky 4 times in a series. Don't underestimate that Brandon Hagel deal too. I mean, that's a heck of a pickup to be able to add to that crew. I just still think that they're better. Sorry,
we're not giving props to the Lightning in this round. Do you even listen to yourself?
No, and that's for good reason.
That's fair. That's a good
I would
pick.
suggest not listening to me. All right, so there's your life lesson for the day. Don't listen to Mark.
Sorry, did you say something?
Exactly. You got the lesson down pat.
Perfect.
All right, we're going to wrap this up rapid fire style. Just got 3 more here. Long-term injured reserve. It's being tabled till the draft to talk about it. Do they need to change the rule, Nick?
Yes, once the cap starts to return to a normal rising rate.
Agree. I think they have to at least somehow close the loophole. I know the players have to agree to it, but I think they have to do something about it. What is on your perfect pizza, Nick? Now we're getting into real shenanigans.
Okay, I've got always extra sauce, no matter what it is, because it always keeps better if you've got extra sauce, because some of it always soaks into the bread. And either a Alfredo with extra cheese and chicken, or a regular pizza sauce, pepperoni, and ham.
For me, it's chicken bacon ranch. Extra well done, but just big pieces of chicken, bacon. Just
is the sauce a ranch sauce, like the base sauce?
Base sauce is ranch. You got it.
That's the most American thing I've ever heard of.
Ever.
Mark. Oh my gosh.
And it's by far, in my mind, the best pizza that you can find. If you can even get it New York style with the thin crust, you got it made.
It's fueling heart disease numbers across the country.
That's exactly right. Clog those arteries now.
Love it.
Last one for you. So, and if you watch football in America, you see these humongous trades that are out there, like Tyreek Hill going from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. You don't see stuff like this in hockey all that often. My question is why? Why do you feel like basketball and football have these monstrous trades, but we don't see it as much in hockey?
I think hockey, star players can be a little more subjective in hockey. Like hockey is so much more of a team sport. It's not based on those star players. Every team that wins needs to have 2 or 3 of those star players, as opposed to like LeBron can just come to town and instantly win you a championship. You know what I mean? It's just such a different sport, and general managers in the NHL generally don't like to make those big moves. They're, because you don't know. It's like being a taxi driver. You don't know when your next big fare is going to come. So I would say there's a little bit of fear in getting rid of some of those guys, especially in a cap era.
Agree with everything you say. The only thing that'll add to that is I think there's a little more loyalty in hockey than in some of the other sports. Just the way I think people operate. But very similar thoughts. Nick, as always, great work. Despite you listening to me a lot of the night, you finally caught on at the end and decided not to listen. So good on you.
What?
Fans, it was awesome as usual to have you join us. Thank you so much for the time. Again, 4 games coming up this week for the Blue Jackets, including Thursday night on Long Island, Boston twice, and then Philadelphia. And then we'll prepare you for Cam Atkinson's return to Nationwide Arena the following week. We'll be back with you next week. Till then, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time on Union Junction.